is 8 minutes, and I wanted to talk about something that Michelle mentioned in the news there. Some Jewish people are questioning whether they can continue to live here in Greater Manchester, and that's because of how unsafe they felt over recent weeks. Now, there have been 131 reports of anti-Semitic incidents in our area in the 21 days after Hamas attacked Israel. That's abuse, graffiti, and even assaults. Now, it's been described as a tsunami of hate towards Jewish people. Raphi Bloom is from the Northwest Friends of Israel. Raphi, it's really horrible to hear that this is happening. We have such a vibrant Jewish community in Greater Manchester, and we've had it for such a long time now. How safe are you feeling?
Good morning. First of all, thank you for having me on. I think it's really important that you mentioned the events of October the 7th first, because I think to put it into context is really important for your listeners. On October the 7th, Hamas terrorists invaded Israel and murdered over 1,400 Israelis, kidnapped a further 200. This was the largest murder of Jews in one day since the Holocaust. And 71% of British Jews have family who live in Israel. So we in our community here, in the Manchester Jewish community and up and down the UK, felt that pain as much as Israelis did. And that's the context of it. Israel then exercised its international right and its legal right to self-defense. And since then, what we've seen is every week for the last 3 weeks, hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets across the UK, including tens of thousands in Manchester. And it's what's happening at those marches that has started to make the Jewish community feel very unsafe here. And I think it's important to talk about what's happening there, because, again, that gives the context. So we've seen...
May I just, sorry, Raphi, may I just add, though, because people have a right, don't they, to support the Palestinian cause.
Absolutely.
Free speech is important, and a lot of people want to really campaign and help protect innocent people in Gaza who are being killed right now.
There is absolutely the right to free speech and to take to the streets to do that. However, let's look at what's being said, because this is really important. This is why Jews feel so unsafe. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is what you hear up and down the streets of this country and in our city every week. That means, in no uncertain terms, the elimination of the Jewish state and the end of Jewish people living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. That is a call to genocide. We've seen ancient Arabic battle cries of Khaybar Khaybar al-Yahud, which references an ancient battle where Jews were massacred. We've seen calls for jihad on the streets, which in this category, when you're talking about Israel and the Palestinians, jihad means a holy war against Jews. We've seen signs, massive number of signs on the streets comparing Israel and its politicians to Hitler and the Nazis. Again, blatant anti-Semitism. We've also seen videos of imams in mosques up and down the country, including some in Greater Manchester, preaching about resistance and praising Hamas. Again, on the streets, we see praise for the resistance. In this case, the resistance is the act of Hamas, a terrorist organization, on October the 7th to murder Jews. Across the country, there's been a 1,350% increase in the last 3 weeks in anti-Semitic Jew hate attacks. Consider that the Jewish population is roughly about 0.5% of the UK population. These are really, really scary things. And we are seeing Jewish people up and down the country for the first time, even more so actually than when Jeremy Corbyn was potentially going to become Prime Minister, really question whether we have a future in this country, and whether, if these marches with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, are allowed to take place week in, week out and dominate our city centres, and no action is taken against the blatant anti-Semitism that's taking place at them, does our country really want us here?
Well, I mean, I think it's really important to point out that not everybody, and I really do believe and hope that the majority of people are not promoting anti-Semitism in these pro-Palestinian marches. And, you know, we have a huge Muslim population here. You know, I mean, just looking at the events overnight, the Palestinian Red Crescent says that Israeli airstrikes have been targeting areas around a hospital in Gaza City overnight. People will also have family in Gaza and be really concerned about them as well. And I think it's so important to make that point that innocent people are being killed on both sides because of this conflict. But in terms of your position, Raphi, you know, do you feel like you are being protected enough by the authorities? Do you feel that the Jewish community could be made to feel safer right now?
Greater Manchester Police have been incredibly reassuring with their presence in the Jewish communities in terms of policemen on the streets, police cars patrolling. And I think it's also important to remind your listeners that it's only Jewish organisations, synagogues and schools in this country that have to have gates and guards around them. Now, what we're seeing, though, is that the actions at these rallies, and I have to respect...
This is all year round, is it, Raphi? It's not just during the recent conflict since October the 7th.
This is all year round, and I have to disagree with you respectfully to say that the vast majority of people from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, is a genocidal call for the end of the only Jewish state in the world and the expulsion of the Jews. That makes Jews here feel very, very nervous. Now, how are we reacting to that? What is happening here in Britain in 2023, in Manchester in 2023? Jewish people are hiding jewellery that makes them identifiable as Jews, so Star of David's around their neck, or my wife, for example, has her name in Hebrew. She's putting it inside her top because she doesn't want people to see that she's Jewish. Every Jewish home has what's called a mezuzah, a parchment scroll that people put on their doors as a sign of faith. That identifies their home as Jewish. People are actively discussing whether to remove them from their doorposts. In schools, parents are discussing whether to send their children to Jewish schools. Is it safe? 2 weeks ago, my grandchildren, 6 and 4, were taught how to lie under a desk in school in case of a terrorist attack. On university campuses, and specifically at Manchester University campus, Jewish students are terrified of identifying themselves as being Jewish. This is not Germany in 1938. This is Manchester in 2023. And as a community, since the Industrial Revolution, we have been civic leaders, we've been economic drivers, we've been educators, artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, doctors, physicians. We're proud to be Mancunians. You know, again, your listeners probably won't know this, but at every synagogue across the country, on every Sabbath, we say a prayer for the welfare of the King and Queen. When we have rallies in support of Israel and in remembering hostages, we sing the national anthem. We are proud citizens of this country, but at the moment, we feel we are not getting the protection from the police at these marches that we should get. Only last night in Prestwich, a Greater Manchester police officer was filmed removing posters calling attention to the plight of individual hostages, civilians being held by Hamas in Gaza. Why is a serving officer of Greater Manchester Police doing that? It makes people very nervous.
I should say that we haven't actually seen that video, and therefore we can't verify it, or we don't know when it was actually recorded either. But we do have the Chief Constable of Greater Manchester Police in the hot seat, who I know is going to be addressing all your concerns raised in the last few minutes, Raphi. Just before you go, you know, obviously a lot of people in the Jewish community right here in Greater Manchester, as you've just reported, say that they're feeling unsafe right now. If we turn our attentions to the Middle East, a lot of people who are campaigning on these pro-Palestinian marches are also solely campaigning for a ceasefire. Is this something that you would like to see? Would you like to see a ceasefire?
At the moment, no. Until all the hostages are released, and let's remember that every single one of them being held is a war crime, a ceasefire would only benefit Hamas and allow it to rearm, regroup, and attack Israel again.
Would it not benefit the innocent Palestinians as well, though?
At the moment, what is happening in Gaza is a response, is a legitimate international response, a legal international response to a genocidal massacre that Hamas undertook against a sovereign state, the only democracy in the Middle East. Anything that's happening in Gaza is the fault of Hamas. They started this war, they asked for this war, and Israel is going out of its way to avoid innocent deaths. Let's also remember, and it's really important that all media outlets do this, that the death statistics being reported from Gaza are coming from the Hamas-run Ministry for Health. Why anybody would believe an organization that butchered and tortured and raped and kidnapped thousands of Jewish people only 3 weeks ago is beyond me. At the moment, Israel is fighting Hamas-ISIS. This is an Islamist movement whose charter, let's remember, calls for the genocide and the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jews, not just in Israel, but anywhere in the world. This is a fight of the entire Western world.
I'm so sorry. We are going to have to leave it there. But thank you very much.